What's up, guys? Welcome to this week's episode of the Budding Watch Enthusiast. Here on this channel, I review and discuss wristwatches from the perspective of someone who hasn't been collecting for very long. So if that's interesting to you, please consider clicking the red subscribe button down below. So I've been really fortunate in my first not even 2 years of watch collecting and in getting to experience watches from hundreds of different brands out there, be they watches that I've purchased for myself, brands that have been generous enough to lend their watches into the channel for review, or just going to watch meetups or watch fairs and checking out the different offerings that are out there. I mean, everything from, the more attainable independent companies to Omega and Rolex to companies like AP and Vacheron. I've gotten to handle my fair share of different watches to get a really good idea and a really good perspective of watches that I like and watches that I don't. But there are a handful of brands out there whose watches I just keep checking out online all the time, but I've never had the opportunity for one reason or another to check out their watches in person. So today I'm talking about my 4 favorite brands that I've only been able to browser window shop with, that I haven't actually seen in person, but their watches and what they do looks really interesting online. Actually, kind of an appropriate wristwatch check today. I'm wearing my Manta SkyQuest, and in talking to a lot of you guys online and checking out forums, Manta is that brand, or one of those brands for a lot of you out there who you've always seen their stuff online and it looks cool, but maybe you haven't gotten a chance to see one yet in person. I love my SkyQuest, fantastic watch, and there's a review that I've done on the channel that you can check out as well. So the first brand that we're going to talk about today is the one that's been around the longest of all the ones that I'm going to speak on, and that is Ball watches. Now, Ball has a rich history that I'm not going to dive too far into. I mean, they've been around for over 100 years. They have their roots in U.S. manufacturing. They're a company that started as a railroad timekeeper, essentially, and graduated onto wristwatches and things of that nature. They just have a super interesting range of different watches and different designs for their watches that span, into dress watch, sports watch, everyday wear watches. But what's cool about Ball as a company is that they have a very, very unique aesthetic and unique style about them, even though they don't go too far off the beaten path in terms of design for most of their watches. Now, of course, the thing that Ball is probably most noted for today is they're one of the few watch brands left out there that still uses tritium for their luminescence on their watches. They don't use, regular lume paint like most companies do nowadays. But there's just so many interesting models. I've actually talked about the Ball Engineer Ohio on this channel before. I mentioned it as a great affordable alternative for a Rolex Explorer. Something new they came out with a few months back that really caught my eye was their new Engineer Hydrocarbon Aero GMT. Just a really badass looking GMT watch. And if I had to buy a Ball watch, it would probably be a Ball Fireman Glory. That's the one. It works in every situation. It's like a step up over like a Seiko Sarbo 33 or something of that sort. That's kind of the feel and the look that I get from that watch. Weirdly enough, though, as much stature as Ball has, all the meetups that I've been to, all the gatherings that I've been to, I've never actually gotten to handle a Ball watch in person, which I just find really peculiar. I don't know anyone actually, that's not true. I do know one person that owns one, so maybe the next time I get a chance to see Ricardo over on Watch With Us, I'll make sure that he brings his Ball watch with him. But yeah, like I said, this is a company I've almost pulled the trigger on buying a Ball watch a couple different times now and just haven't really done it yet. But just a very interesting brand with a very unique yet traditional look. Ball watch is certainly a company that I browser window shop all the time. The second company that I'll mention also has been around for a little bit more than just a minute. They've been on the block for a little bit. That is Mark II watches. Now, those of you that are seasoned watch enthusiasts probably know Mark II very well, probably know Bill Yao very well. For those who don't know, Mark II is a company that makes very deliberate but very over-engineered homage watches to a lot of famous references that have come before. The reason that these watches are excellent, though, is because Bill Yao, who's the watchmaker, does a ton of QC and just designs these watches to just be excellently crafted. Talk to pretty much anyone who's owned a Mark II watch. Go into the Watch You Seek forums and talk to Mark II owners, and they will tell you that these watches are just amazingly crafted. Now, if you're not really into homages, if that's not really your deal, you're probably not going to really care for Mark II too much, because again, that is what they do. It's even in the name of the brand. Mark II is meaning, you know, like the second version of something. But for me, there's something a little extra to be said about what Mark II does, because they have a very strict rules that they adhere to when it comes to how they design their watches and which watches that they design. And it's not like he's just slapping these watches together to make a quick buck. These are meticulously designed and really well thought out so that you are getting an excellent product, and one that in many cases, from a technical standpoint, is better than the original one that preceded it. Now, the big knock on these guys is that if you want one of their Benchmade line, which is their, handcrafted line, the wait time on those can be a little extreme. I know for me, I'm not nearly that patient to wait for such a thing. They do have some ready-to-wear watches. They do have some watches that you can order and get shipped relatively quickly. The watch of theirs that really gets my attention that I keep looking at constantly was one that he made a few years ago called the Mark II Kingston, which is an homage to the Rolex Submariner reference 6538, aka the James Bond Submariner, the original one at least, that Sean Connery wore in several Bond films. And of course, you guys know, as a huge James Bond fanatic, it's my favorite Rolex reference, and one that I'm not likely to ever own because the prices that good condition 6538s go for is astronomical. But perhaps down the road, I might be able to pick up a Mark II Kingston at some point to kind of satiate that itch. It's homage watches done in the best possible way. I'm really surprised that I have not encountered one out there in the wild. Hopefully soon. The third brand that I wanted to talk about today reminds me of Manta in a lot of ways, and that is Oak and Oscar. Now, Oak and Oscar, much like Manta, is one of those watch companies that's kind of thrown into that all-encompassing micro brand label as far as watch brands go. But much like Manta, I think that that label actually carries a bit of a detrimental effect to them, just because micro brand, that label has a specific expectation, typically around affordability. Oak and Oscar make a little bit more of a premium product, but because they kind of get tagged with that micro brand label, a lot of folks balk at the prices that they charge. But when you look at the watches online, the quality, at least from a glance, appears to be stellar. I love a company that is able to take design elements, design aesthetic elements, and kind of make it their own. Oak and Oscar is certainly one of those companies that when you look at their watches, if you're familiar with their look like, you'll automatically be able to spot it in a lineup, I guess you could say. And it's really small stuff too. Like, it's the fact that they have the whiskey barrel counterbalance on the second hand that always perfectly passes over a similar logo that will be painted on the dial. It's the fact that they use the little hash mark through the sevens, not only on their numerals, but even on their date windows as well. And you can see the craftsmanship that they're bringing to the table, not only from the dials when you're checking them, but if you flip it over, the custom rotor that they use on their watches and just the decoration that they use on the movements as well is fantastic for a watch in that price range. For me, the Sanford GMT watch or the Humboldt Field watch are the clear choices as well. Even the Jackson chronograph, I'm a big fan of as well, even though I don't tend to lean towards chronographs usually. It's just a great looking watch. It doesn't surprise me that I haven't gotten to really see any of these watches from Oak and Oscar in person. Not only do they make limited production runs of their watches, but it's also at a price point that is a tough price point for an independent brand, just because you really have to show people the product to get them to believe in the brand. And it's one of those brands that it's kind of tough to spend that kind of money on sight unseen. But that doesn't stop me. Every time I'm scrolling on Instagram and see someone post one of their watches, it stops me in my tracks. Every time I catch my eye wandering or see them on the forums, I'm always looking at it, kind of wondering, man, I really would love to get my hands on one of these one day and check it out. So yeah, Oak and Oscar, a watch brand that I come back to continually in terms of checking out what they have to offer. The final company that I wanted to talk about today is arguably the one that I'm the most curious to see in person at some point, and that is Pelton watches. Now, Pelton has not been around as far as selling watches that long. I think they're not even as old as my channel is, because I'm pretty sure they started selling watches sometime in 2018. So Pelton is doing something that I haven't really seen any US-based brand doing, and that is, aside from the movements, which are sourced and probably other, other components like the crystal, stuff like that. But all the metalworks of the watch, the case back, the bracelet, that's all being manufactured and finished by them in-house. If you go to peltonusa.com, which is their website, you can kind of see a lot of behind the scenes videos of their manufacturing process. And it is really, really interesting and really, really cool to see a small watch company making watches in a method like this. Pelton's not a company that just has watches sitting around, at their warehouse or at their office waiting to be shipped out. All of their watches are made to order. They only have 2 watch models available right now, the Sector, which is an appropriately named Sector dial everyday watch. The other watch is, and for me this is the real stunner, is the Pelton Perseus dive watch, which is a very obviously Royal Oak inspired diver that has the integrated bracelet in a very similar fashion that Royal Oak does. And again, this is another one of those brands that it's very easy to look at the price point. The Perseus, for example, costs just a shade under $3,000. It's very easy to look at that and say, oh man, that can't possibly be worth the money. But if you actually know watches, if you look at the manufacturing that goes into it, if you look at the the finishing by hand that goes into these watches and the fact that they're all individually made, fact of the matter is $3,000 for a watch like that is actually a bit of a bargain. They probably could be charging a lot more considering everything that they're doing. And again, I know exactly why I haven't seen one. It's because I don't know how many watches Pelton have sold so far. I can't imagine it's a ton, because that is a brand that is catering to a very specific space within the watch community. And even for me, like if I have $3,000 to spend on a watch, I'm probably not going to go after a Pelton or an independent brand watch. I'm probably going to look more in terms of possibly Tudor or Grand Seiko, but just amazing, interesting looking watches. And I would love to be able to see one at a show. I hope I get a chance to go to a watch fair one time where Pelton is presenting, or if I'm lucky enough to encounter someone in the wild at like a watch meetup or something like that that has one. I'm dying to see what these things look like in person. I have to imagine that they're even better than they look online. But Pelton is the number 4 one, and again, one that I'm always catch my eye wandering to whenever I'm cruising around online. So guys, that is it for this video. Let me know in the comments below, what are some watch brands that you love to browser window shop for while you're cruising around on the internet that you have not yet gotten the chance to see in person? I'd love to hear which brands and which watches you guys find your eyes lingering towards all the time. If you guys like the video, hit the thumb down below. If you love the video, click the red subscribe button and the bell icon. Thank you all so much for watching this, and I will see you all the next time.